Hey there, I'm Joe Carter. If you've ever popped the hood and thought, where do I even start? You're in good company. Around here, we take the mystery out of car repair, one fix at a time. Whether you're a beginner or just looking to sharpen your skills, there's something here for you. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you're into learning without the headaches. All right, that's enough from me. Let's get into it.
The role of ignition in the operation of the internal combustion engine. It should be remembered that ignition of the combustible mixture occurs at the instant when the piston reaches a specific position relative to the TDC. You should also be aware of the terms early and late ignition. Due to abnormal, i.e., early or late ignition of the fuel, the cylinder is subjected to a kind of explosion. But how to set the ignition and avoid severe shock loads when the piston is somewhat displaced from the center, striking the cylinder walls? As a result of detonation, the edges and working plane of the valves, as a rule, melt and burn through. This phenomenon is closely related to the requirements of setting the ignition advance angle, LE. This means that in one revolution of the crankshaft, it is necessary to provide the spark so that the combustible mixture has time to burn completely. Combustion of a mixture, for example, gasoline air, occurs from the spark plug spark supplied to the combustion chamber. This occurs at the moment when the piston reaches the compression stroke, i.e. TDC. The matter is in the huge speed of rotation of the crankshaft. In an instant, the piston passes the way, pushing from the moment of ignition to move downward under the influence of burnt gases. If ignition occurs when the piston reaches TDC, combustion will occur at the beginning of the stroke. This will cause the pressure of the gases to decrease. But if ignition occurs before it moves upward, there will be a counteraction to its movement. System design. The ignition system is oriented to supply a spark discharge to the spark plugs in time with engine operation. There are variants of contactless and electronic systems, identical in the way of creating a pulse. To have a superficial notion of how to set the ignition, it is not unreasonable to know about its main elements: power source, battery, necessary for starting the engine, and the current generator to run the car. The ignition switch, designed to supply voltage to the electrical system. Ignition coil, which converts the battery energy to 30,000 V, enough to create an electrical discharge between the electrodes of the spark plug. Spark plugs are a metal conductor with an outer insulation of heat-resistant porcelain. The second electrode is the threaded part of the plug. The distance between the electrodes is 0.15 divided by 0.25 mm. The ignition distribution unit helps to supply energy from the coil to the plugs according to the engine tacts, e.g. 1-3-4-2. The distributor breaker is designed to distribute voltage by means of wires to the plugs. High-voltage wires are single-core, you can say cables, with a high degree of insulation. To eliminate radio interference, the inner wire is made in the form of a spiral. It should be remembered that the ignition setting is the need to burn the fuel mixture without residue. This means that it must be fed and burned after the piston reaches TDC. Incorrect setting of the ignition timing is sure to lead to detonation of the cylinders with all the ensuing consequences. The order of installation. The question arises, how to set the ignition? So, we have learned that the ignition of the mixture should occur when the piston reaches TDC. This moment is determined by the position of the crankshaft. In other words, we are talking about the position, in degrees, of the crankshaft to TDC. If there is an offset toward the TDC, this position is called late ignition. Displacement towards the NMT is called early ignition timing. The value of the latter directly depends on the engine speed. So, at high shaft speed, the early ignition timing is set. The procedure itself, how to set the ignition on the car, is much simpler than its verbal presentation. Without going into subtleties, we put the car, for example, VAZ2105, in neutral position with the handbrake tightened. The sequence of operation consists in removing the distributor breaker cover, trambuller, and turning the crankshaft with a special wrench to the position until the slider is not directed to the first cylinder. Visually fix the position of the factory marks and castings on the pulley and front cover. Their coincidence is extremely important. Before setting the ignition on your car, you need to check serviceability of the plugs, breaker contacts, capacitor on charge, discharge. With a tester, ignition coil and wires coming from it. Having made sure and in good working order of the carburetor, vacuum unit, you can begin to set the ignition. Crankshaft marking VAZ2109 assume that the trampola needs to be put back in place after repair. To do this, find the one cylinder and focus on the marks of the crankshaft and the casting on the timing cover, timing gear. The operation is done by turning the crankshaft. This coincidence will indicate the compression stroke. Inserted in the plug hole plug, to check the compression, will necessarily fly out. Next, you need to align the mark on the pulley with the longest mark on the cover. Install the trampola in the timing splines, so that the runner is placed in the direction of the one cylinder. Next, in order to turn the crankshaft, the trampola is slightly lifted and one spline is moved clockwise. This is done to give the distributor its final adjustment. The factory instruction manual is used to set the contact gap. If there is a gap between the marks, then the trampola should be turned a few degrees to one side or the other. It is necessary to remember, if the pulley mark has gone in the direction of crankshaft rotation, there is late ignition. The trampola must be turned counterclockwise. If the mark on the pulley has fallen behind the casting on the cap, there is a very early ignition. Then turn the tamper switch clockwise by a certain number of degrees. Setting the advance angle can be done with an ordinary test lamp or a stroboscope. But this is another topic. Checking the quality of work on how to correctly set the ignition, a test check of the ignition timing should be carried out, starting with the acceleration of the car to 40 km/h. Then, pressing the gas pedal, the car is accelerated to 60 km, preferably more, and carefully listen to the work of the motor. There may be a clanking sound, which will indicate the presence of detonation. With speeding up, the sound should stop. This may mean that the system works normally, and the driver understands how to set the ignition on his car. Detonation usually indicates an early advance angle. Ignition system auto ignition system diagram crankshaft marks. In conclusion, setting the ignition timing correctly is crucial for optimal engine performance and efficiency. By following the steps outlined in this video, you can adjust the ignition timing yourself without the need for a stroboscope, ensuring that your engine runs smoothly and effectively. Remember, achieving the right timing helps eliminate issues related to premature or delayed ignition, ultimately enhancing your vehicle's overall performance. With a little patience and attention to detail, you can take control of your engine's ignition system and enjoy a more reliable driving experience. Thank you for watching, and happy tuning!